My name is Kathy, and I love David Oliver. I'm going to talk about David as teacher. I met David Oliver when I was a student at the School of the Ozarks in 1972. I was all of 18 years old with no gray hair. He was all of 30 years with no gray hair. I showed him a picture of us last year from those days, and he said he was glad neither of us had changed a bit. I wanted to be the perfect sociology major, and David wanted to be the perfect sociology professor, so we were a good match. This was a small college of about 1,200 students, and the number of faculty in each department was small, so you got to be pretty familiar with each of the faculty members in your chosen majors. David had only been at the college a few years, but he had already established himself as one of the most popular professors there had ever been. He was finishing up his PhD and away from campus my freshman year. So when I told another student that I wanted to be a sociology major, she said, "Well, you have to wait till David Oliver gets back to start taking sociology courses. He's the best, and you'll regret it if you don't." So I waited. I got a little restless my second semester, and she again said, "No, you need to wait for David Oliver. He's the best." So I waited, and I never regretted it. I think that David might have had this HOPE acronym in his subconscious even back then, because he taught with humor, he taught with optimism, he was passionate, and he was excited. Teaching in the 70s was before computers could fit in your hand or on your wrist, before there were applications like PowerPoint, Blackboard, and Prezi. Being the excited teacher that he was back then, David actually burned calories as he taught, using every inch of the blackboard to write notes on, pacing frantically back and forth across the front of the room, gesticulating wildly with both hands, but smiling, always smiling, as he lectured and imparted his knowledge. Learning did not stop in the classroom, though. He joined forces with other professors to take students to Chicago for a week, just to see what urban sociology really was. He produced his own campus radio show. He brought in nationally known speakers to discuss the difficult issues of race and poverty and violence. As I completed that sociology major, it wasn't what David taught me about sociology that helped shape who I was then and who I am today. It was what he taught me about defining myself that made the difference in my life. The college we were at had a mission to serve financially challenged young people from the Ozarks. And as noble as that was, many administrators there never let us forget just how grateful we should be to them and the donors, and what good work they were doing with us. But when you took a class from David, you felt like he thought teaching you was a privilege. He focused on the potential in us rather than any limits due to where we had come from, what color our skin was, or how poor we were. From him, I learned that I didn't have to let other people define me in ways that were convenient for them. I could define myself, set my own goals, and live by the values that I held important. He was proof that I could live a bigger life than my limited childhood had led me to believe. David was an advocate for students on many occasions. Not that David participated in this activity, but he was even an advocate for the students who got caught streaking on campus. For 2 years of my young adult life, David was a huge part of it. Then one day, while I was at work in the faculty offices, he asked me to type a letter for him. It was his official letter of acceptance of a position at Trinity University in San Antonio. I was stunned and heartbroken, certain that no one could ever replace him. Our lives changed in many ways in the 40 years since then, but I am so grateful that we maintained this special relationship over those 40 years, even extending it to the next generation when my son-in-law became a professor here at Mizzou. Thank you, David, for embodying what a great teacher should be, and thank you, David, for being all about life, for helping me find that bigger life, for showing all of us how a person can choose to live life on their terms, for making my life unimaginably richer than it would have been without you, for teaching me it's all about relationships, and for being that one-of-a-kind teacher.
Hi, my name is Jessica. As most of you know, my dad was a teacher above all else, and a great public speaker. I'm not really either, so bear with me if I lack this finesse. But growing up with him as a parent, I found learning a few things from him, and I'd like to share just a couple of those. My dad taught me not only to dance, but to dance through life. My dad saw life itself as a beautiful dance, and I've always told us to just feel the music. He taught me to appreciate other cultures and instilled a desire to travel and a thirst for knowledge about how others live. Dad taught me that some of the most meaningful worship experiences a person can have happen outside the walls of a church. Whether it was an informal Sunday service in Church of the Great Outdoors when I was a child, a hike in the mountains, or simply choosing to be mindful of any single given moment. He saw all of these as being spiritual experience. He taught me to show others when I care about them. Dad was one of the most generous, caring men I've ever met. And he taught me to consider the needs of others in every interaction, big or small. I thought of a lot of different examples of this one, but just one tiny example. When I was in college, I called him excited about something. I tend to talk about a million miles a minute. I started doing that when he answered the phone about whatever it was I was excited about. And he stopped me mid-sentence and he said, "Now, Jessica, you first have to ask how I'm doing and if I have a minute to talk." I hope he noticed my cranky listen to that advice from then on. Because he was right. And he taught me that there's a solution to every problem. And I would get stressed and be not thinking as clearly about a situation when I was growing up. Dad would patiently tell me, there's a solution to every problem. You just have to find it. I eventually adopted that as my own motto, and when things start to feel overwhelming, I always just repeat that to myself. He taught me to be adventurous. I'm pretty reserved by nature. My dad was anything but reserved. He taught me that stepping out there, trying new things, and seeing the world really makes life worth living, and I know I am a very different person having learned that from him over the years. He also taught me what defines family. He taught me that family means the people that you are bound to by love, no matter what life throws at you, or what disagreements you may have. Along those same lines, he taught me to love unconditionally. My dad certainly did not always agree with me, but I know that I never doubted that he loved me, not for a single minute. And I try every day of my own life to show others that same unconditional love. And perhaps the most relevant lesson for us today is the relationship between love and grief. My entire life, every single time I ever lost someone, my dad was the one to comfort me. He would tell me that love and grief are inseparable. They're two sides of the same coin. He said that the more you love somebody, the more it's going to hurt when you lose them. His advice was to focus on that love side of the equation. Many of you have probably seen the video he recorded on this very subject, where he told us that on today, the day of his memorial service, we should focus on that love side of the equation and think about all of our happy memories with him. He asked us to view today as one of his last gifts to us, bringing everybody together to remember him. He might not be here in body, but he is certainly still here in spirit. I can only hope that I will be half the parent that he was. I'll never forget when he invited himself to the ultrasound appointment where we found out my son's gender. We walked in and he was already waiting for us. And yes, he came in third. And the moment that we found out that my son was a boy, my husband and I were a little shocked for a minute before we responded, but my dad and my sister automatically started jumping up and down and screaming and cheering so loud. I think the whole building probably knew I was having a boy. Dad was incredibly proud of all of us. Oliver's almost 2 years old. He's just as ornery as his grandfather. You might not remember his grandpa as he grows up, but the lessons that I've learned from him will be passed down, and his legacy will live on not only through my son, but through every single person whose heart he touched.
Hi, my name is Bob, and I love David Oliver. I have to start, I live in Colorado, and I have to start by thanking all of you for, number one, allowing me to be here, but number two, I always knew that folks in Missouri were very hospitable. My wife was from Kansas City, the good side, the Missouri side. So I spent a lot of time in Kansas City, and I knew that Missourians were wonderful people, but I look around the room and I see all of you in black and gold, and I can't thank you enough for your hospitality of wearing the colors of the Colorado Buffaloes. That's very nice. Very nice. I just find that very good. I first met David in 1981. We were both members of the same committee in our professional society, and instantly sort of became friends. And I'm thankful, I'm blessed that friendship lasted for the next 34 years. I'm supposed to talk about David as a leader, and everyone in this room understands that he was, in fact, a wonderful leader. My first experience of him as a leader was at that meeting, actually, in 1981. The meeting was in Denver, and he led all of us on the committee at midnight through an unlocked gate at Bronco Stadium. And we wrapped around the 50-yard line at midnight. We all knew we were either going to get shot by an overzealous security guard or arrested, but we followed him anyway. And that to me is a prime example of what a leader he was. The other thing I learned at that exact same meeting, he played pinball with my wife, and she beat him. He was competitive. That didn't go well, but only for a minute. And he quickly not only accepted it, but could joke about it. So that's my first memory. For the next 34 years, I had the privilege of watching his leadership. And it was amazing, whether it was as an administrator in St. Joe, whether it was in academia, no matter where it was, and I'm sorry I have to put my glasses on, you could not help but be led by his vision, by his zeal, by his passion, and of course by his knowledge. But we all know people who have great knowledge who aren't great leaders. And David was someone who could couple that knowledge with just this amazing ability to transfer it to other people. And it was wonderful, and I'm grateful for it. Its leadership is enshrined by the legacy one leaves behind. Then David was one amazing leader. His commitment to culture change before it became fashionable in healthcare was incredible. Certainly led our little organization of elderly care facilities that I'm responsible for to look at things that we would not have looked at as quickly as we did were it not for David. His other ability was putting himself, and particularly in academia, his students, I apologize, I couldn't take these off and on, but when I have them on, I can't see you, and when I have them off, I can't read. So it's a dilemma. I should probably get bifocals, but you know, I don't want to. Anyway, his second ability was this amazing ability to put his students, whether they were employees or whether they were in an academic setting, in the shoes of the people that they either were responsible for or were going to be responsible for. His programs of having his students live the life of a nursing home resident is something that we've emulated over and over again, and we're grateful for that also. After his diagnosis, we invited David to speak to our group of administrators and directors of nursing of our little firm. We get together twice a year, and we were very fortunate that David spoke at a number of those, actually. But that one was particularly poignant, obviously. And he spoke for 2 hours about what he would look for, actually demand is a better word, if he were a resident in one of our facilities. It was the most amazing, moving thing I think I've ever heard. We totally blew through our Kleenex budget, no pun intended. But at the end, I think everyone in that room left with a renewed commitment to do what was right, to be sure that we always understood that we were there for the people who had been entrusted to us for care, and that we better pay attention every single day to make sure we did the right thing. Whoops. Sorry about that. I wrote to all of our folks after getting word of David's passing that he signed every email to me St. David. And ironically, this is a true story. This morning I opened up my Outlook address book to add a name to it, and David's name popped up, and under occupation I had written saint. I had looked at it in a long time, and I saw it this morning. We all know today that was really true, that we're all privileged to be a part of his life. I certainly want to thank everyone, and certainly Debbie and the family, for sharing him with us, because he's an extremely special person. I have to take my hat off to him, but I know where I am, so I'll take off the right one. So there we go. And here's to you. Thank you very much.
Into our lives for a reason, bringing something we must learn, and we hold those who left us lost wrong, if we let them, and we help them in return. Well, I don't know if I believe that's true, but I know I am who I am today because I knew you. Who can say if I've changed for the better because I knew you? I have been changed for good. About whatever way our stories I know you have your life, we cry forever. Like a ship blown from its mooring, on the dark sea. Like a sea dropped by a sky, in a distant. Who can say that change forever? Because I knew you, I have been changed for good. Just forgetting and forgiveness for the things I've done you made me. But then I guess we know there's plenty to share, and none of it seems to matter anymore. Like a common sail wind like a stream that needs like a sea dropped by a carrier who can say that I've been changed for the better? I do believe I have been changed for the better. Because I knew, I have been changed for good.
Hi, I'm Betsy, and I love Dave Oliver.
Hi.
I'm going to go off something right away. I remember there's a Doris Kearns Goodwin, she's a historian. She has a quote about Teddy Roosevelt, that he loved to be in the center of things, and he wanted to be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. I thought about that when I watched Dave on video here. So, my husband Dave Pasley and our dear friend Bill Montgomery and I drove up from Texas to be here. And Debbie, thank you so much for including us in this special celebration. You're a special guy. 5 minutes is hardly enough time to even tell a David Oliver joke. So instead, I've written him a letter. So let me read that to you. Dear Dave, we know about Dave, by the way. I wrote you a letter in 2013 after I read your ebook. But now that your earthly journey is complete, I've found that there's some things I'd like to add. 40 years is a long time. It's 2/3 of my life, and the span of time I've known you, learned from you, and loved you. As I look back on your amazing 70-plus years, I see 3 acts. The first, in your tumultuous childhood that defined you, taught you priorities and prepared you for great things. I was privileged to be part of the second act, which included your professorship at Trinity. Kathy, I apologize that we stole it from you. As well as your membership in our ragtag running group, known as the Bombay Bicycle Club Jogging Association. I realize now that this was the only time you had away from Missouri, and those were also your drinking days. I think the third act started when you went back home to Missouri. You faced and you conquered those personal demons and found a new fulfilling life. When I look back, I have a scrapbook of images. I have some actual photos and some that are simply stamped into my memory. Here I am in the mid-70s. I'm a Trinity student attending your death and dying class. It's the first day and you asked us our names and then insisted that we sit in the same seats at the next lecture. I didn't know why until the next class when you went across all the rows, identifying each of the more than 100 students. That really impressed me. In the human sexuality class I took with my soon-to-be hubby, Dave Dazzler, I can see you now, Kathy, I thought about this, pacing across the floor, leading us in discussion, and involving us in some really explicit videos. Your enthusiasm, no matter the subject, was infectious. You even tolerated our juvenile questions. Once I asked him, why did they keep falling off the bed when we just watched a film called Quickie, which included some very acrobatic lovemaking? You also laughed when Dave and I asked you for some extra credit work. As I recall, you never gave us any. In my earlier letter to you, I mentioned that your teaching has always been thoughtful and riveting. Now, I might add, it's also been life-changing. Okay, the next picture. We're in front of Trinity Sam Center Gym, where we met every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for a noontime run. I found this great photo, and I posted this on Facebook, by the way, the other day. Great photo from one of those many days. You're resplendent in a striped polo shirt in the center of the picture, naturally. Your arms are spread wide in exuberance as we headed out for our intellectually and our physically stimulating 5-mile journey through Brackenridge Park. Another photo shows us at one of the many jogger celebrations in Bombay, that 70s fern bar near the campus. On Fridays, we particularly focused on rehydrating and finding all sorts of reasons to celebrate our youthful minds and bodies. You're holding a 3-foot wide comb in this picture, and I'd love to remember that story, but I can't. Then in 1978, when my Dave and I told you that we were getting married, I remember your impish grin when you told us that great story about the quarters. You said if we put a quarter in a jar every time we had sex that first year, and then took one out after that, we would never empty that jar. So Dave, you were right, but on the bright side, we paid cash for my last vehicle. Nature is the subject of that next photo. After our graduation, we moved back to Missouri, and my Dave decided to try his hand at his father's funeral home business in Liberty. You invited him to come and speak to his Trinity class about the industry. I recall flying in late one March night from Missouri, and then waking up the next day to bright green foliage, something we didn't have back home in the brown, leafless heartland. Don't take that personally. Even though he didn't stay in that profession, Dave and I so appreciated that paid visit back, and I think my husband enjoyed being an expert at the right age of 23. My next memory is in your house in Liberty, Missouri. You left Trinity to a job for downtown Kansas City and then decided to move to Dave's suburban home in Liberty, just down the street from my in-laws. It was so much fun to see you and the kids on a regular basis. The specific crisp winter day in 1980, we were in your den cheering on the U.S. hockey team against Russia in the Olympics. What a day. Yeah. I wasn't there for the next photo. I'm sorry, 1980, okay, just 4 years later, 1984, I have a picture of you on our deck in San Antonio. You were in town that same day that we were having a joggers party to commemorate my Dave's urban planning master's degree and the second marriage of a fellow jogger. When you walked in, we asked what kind of beer you wanted to drink. When you asked for a Sprite, you shocked us all. It was then that you shared your alcoholism with us. I think that night signaled your third act. The sober but still ebullient teacher. And you know, in retrospect, we realized, Dave, you didn't need a stimulant. You drank it every day of your life with gusto. 1989 was a modeling year. I gave birth to our son, but it was also separated from my husband after 12 years. This image is me sitting on our burgundy velour recliner, talking to you on my trim-line phone about my dilemma. Your advice was compassionate, brutally honest, and spot on. Through the grace of God, counseling, and friends like you, we survived and celebrated our 37th anniversary 11 days ago. I wasn't there for the next photo in Columbia around 2004, but after you had returned to your academic home here at MU, Dave and my son Tex visited the campus. At the time, our son was interested in journalism, and we set up a visit with one of the J School professors. You and Debbie hosted them during that visit, graciously showing Tex around. I think our ongoing relationship with past teachers like you set the framework for his own appreciation for his professors. Well, our son ended up in law school instead of journalism. I'm convinced this was a meaningful visit. Well, time passed, and we saw you occasionally, and often unexpectedly, and Bradley too, on a Saturday morning in San Antonio at our Mirador restaurant, the breakfast place we've been going to after a morning run for more than 40 years. One of the best memories was that time you brought Debbie down to meet us. Sitting there at the table, my thoughts were, one, wow, she's amazing. Why does she put up with you? And two, really, you're going to raise 3 girls now? After raising those 2 fabulous sons with Cynthia? By golly, you did, and you're 5 for 5. That's not bad. My final pictures of you are after the diagnosis, after the chemo, after the decision to not continue the treatment, after the Rush concert you attended in San Antonio with Brad, the October Missouri landscape in 2012 for a tour of the campus and a walk on the Katy Trail by the Missouri River was special in my mind as we walked and we talked about God, Zen, the soul, and immortality. On campus, you were excited to point out Jesse Hall and your induction into that secret society. As my friend Bill noted yesterday, Dave has left his mark everywhere he's been. And Dave and I really enjoyed helping you complete a bucket list item in Enchanted Rock in the Texas Hill Country just a year ago. But that Saturday morning in November 2011 was especially poignant. You emailed us a link to your video announcing your disease and your prognosis. Still vivid in my mind is a picture of my Dave saying to me, Oliver has cancer, and I think he's coming to breakfast this morning. Indeed, you did with Debbie and your sobering news in tow. But your zest for life and your decision to not fight this cancer like so many do just added to your legend. So thanks, Dave. Thanks for all the images, all the memories, all the lessons. Thanks for showing us how to live life to the fullest and how to die with grace. So what do we do now? I'm going to really think hard about what battles I pick in life and to save energy for what really matters. I'm going to continue to learn and teach wherever I can. I'm going to keep smiling and drinking life as you always did. And I'm so glad we had a chance to say goodbye, and I love you.